Alright, we got another big boy here today by Discoveryopt. This is their XED model. This is brand new. They just came out with this as a 6-36 by 56. Got your Christmas tree reticle there. It's a first focal plane. Let me get this guy out of here. There'll be a link in the description for this if you want to check it out in more detail, or grab yourself one. Always with the dramatic slow release. And if there's any discount code I'll have for you guys, it'll be also in the video description with the link. We're going to do a quick unboxing overview here, and then we'll take her down to the range, get her sighted in. I'll have some images through the scope for you guys a little later in the video. There's your instructions there, and if I'm not mistaken, Discovery has a lifetime warranty. Yep, you can see that right there. Okay, so this is a big boy scope. They have this in MRAD and MOA. I'll link both. Mine is MOA because that's what I prefer. Got your quality control checkoff list here. That's cool to see. And I've already unwrapped her there. Comes with screen wipe. What's this? Some of your basic stats there, so that saves me from having to go over them all there. You can just pause and read that if you wish. Obviously this thing's shockproof, waterproof, fall-proof, nitrogen purged, all that. It comes with a scope leveling kit. This thing's pretty cool. You got your sunshade here if you want to attach that to the end and use that. Now, a little note on the rings. They are changing. They used to include rings with pretty much all their scopes. If you've seen my previous reviews of any of their scopes, which, by the way, I absolutely love Discoveryopt scopes. They're my favorite in this price range so far. Great quality, great glass. All the previous ones always included rings. But they're actually discontinuing doing that for all the models currently, except for these 35mm models, because I assume because 35mm rings are difficult to find. These are 1.26 inch, so medium, on a flat top Picatinny rail all the way across. If you like, say, put this on your, it's a little big for an AR, but let's say an AR-10, and I am going to have it mounted up on my AR later in the video. If it's a flat top all the way across, these are just a little bit too low, so these are going to be perfect on some, you know, like a hunting style rifle with a bolt action, because the barrel drops down. And it's actually going to work on my AR just fine, because I got the Picatinny rail on the rear to mount these, and then it drops down just a smidge to make way for scopes like that. So it's by design, so it depends on what kind of rail you have. But if you're a flat top Picatinny all the way across with that big 56mm lens, these are just a smidge too low. However, and I'm gonna have to grab some of these and do a video on them later, you can get, and I'm going to link it in the description of this video as well, you can get just little riser bases that go under your scope rings for Picatinny that'll bring it up just a little bit, like say ½ an inch. So if you're putting this on an AR-10 that's got a Picatinny rail flat top all the way across, you know, clear down to the muzzle, those are going to work just fine, and they're like 12-15 bucks or something like that. So I will post a link to those in the description if you're going to need some of those. You don't need to go out and spend $100, $150, $200, whatever, on higher height rings. If you have that clearance issue, you can just simply get those and install them under there to get yourself a little more height. So I'll have that linked, but this is going to work fine for me on my rifle. But again, if it's a flat Picatinny rail all the way across, I don't think it's going to fit for you. And of course, it'll fit perfect on, you know, your typical hunting rifle bolt action style. So, man, this thing barely fits in frame. It's a big boy. They look a little wonky, but I've always actually loved these oversized turrets here. Yeah, it does have an illuminated reticle. Again, somewhere in the video I'll get some images through the scope to give you guys an idea of what the reticle looks like and the illumination, all that. So Got our flip up caps here. Under that rear one, there should be a diopter. Let me wiggle this guy off of here. So yeah, you got your diopter there. So you can set it for your own personal eyesight if you need such an adjustment. You got a detachable throw lever here, but that's your magnification ring. So as you can see, 6 to 36x. Now, one thing I wondered about this scope was it commands a higher price than their previous models similar to this. I tested a 5 to 25 by 56 by them, and then a 5 to 40, I think it was. And this is more expensive than both of those, and this is a 6 to 36. And of course, they were all 34 or 35 millimeter tubes with the 56 millimeter objective there. So I asked them, why is the price higher on this one? And you might notice something different there. So this has a really unique re-zero and zero stop function on it. So it's tool free here. Okay, depending on how tight I put that on. You can spin that off with just your hand there. So you don't need any tools to take that off. And then your turret here just slips right off. And then this is really awesome. Instead of having like 3 little tiny screws like others I've worked with, and they're real easy to strip out to set your zero stop, you got just this one massive screw here. That's also part of the advantage of these turrets being so large. So you just, that one there that's not ever going to strip out on you, and you put it to where you need it to be. Let me see here. And right there's your stop. So the way this works, and it's too high right now, it'll pass over it. You will adjust this accordingly and set this in the proper orientation as well, to where you're going to line up on 0 there. And then if you want to utilize the zero stop, you'll need to adjust this accordingly to where this is on 0, and then have this low enough on this shank to where you can turn it until it stops on this nub here, and that's what will stop it on 0 every time if you have everything situated correctly. So it's really not that difficult. If you've done it once, then you'll have it down, but this greatly simplifies it. Again, tool free to get it off of there. And then instead of 3 little tiny ones that'll strip out easy, you get this one big one. So that was part of the reason that the price has gone up on this. And I gotta say, I absolutely love this system. I wish every scope out there had this, because it's a huge improvement over the way you would typically do that. And then on top of that, they said the glass on this one is also better, which I've kind of already noticed. And I noticed before I even asked, and they told me this. Because I held it up just when I got it, pulled it out of the box, looked out the back window, which is not a perfectly clean back window, and I put it all the way up on maximum magnification. I didn't even perfectly set the parallax, which, by the way, you have your parallax setting here from 40 to infinity yards. And I mean, if you're around scopes very much, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you try to just hold the scope itself up to your eye on maximum magnification, as opposed to being mounted to the firearm, it's really hard to look through it if it's a high-powered scope on maximum magnification, because you're moving around so much holding it in your hands compared to it being stabilized on the rifle. And I cranked that thing all the way up, looked out my dirty back window out in the field a couple hundred yards, and I could actually see a couple hundred yards back to the field, no problem, without the parallax even being set, and holding it in my shaky hands instead of having it stabilized on a rifle, which again, you mount it on a rifle, it's way better than just holding it freehand. Again, if you've ever tried that with a high power scope, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So instantly I was like, man, this thing, seems to be more clear, considering I can already see through it no problem, maximum magnification, clear out there, not even being mounted up. So I'm real excited to get it on the rifle, get it out in the field, and give you feedback on that. With their 5 to 25, it was, crystal clear all the way up, maximum magnification. But you go much higher than that, a lot of the scopes, they start getting a little distortion, a little bit foggy, blurry, what have you. Once you get above that 25x magnification, what few scopes out there do have more magnification than that? And I did notice that some on their 40X model, once I got up above 30X, it did start to degrade the clarity a little bit. And I could tweak it a little bit with the diopter and the parallax and all that and get it to look a little better. But it definitely with the magnification above 30 and especially 35 and higher, did not look the greatest. While it was still perfectly usable even out to 1 mile, I showed looking through the scope at 1 mile and you could still see the target and the reticle no problem. I did notice that the image degraded. So with this thing already looking so good, just freehanding it out the window, I'm really excited to see the clarity on 36x magnification once we actually get it mounted up and out in the field. So stay tuned for that. All right, now real quick, since this is already taking so long and I just have so much to say because I just really love these scopes. So you'll notice that in my videos, if it's something I'm really excited about or something I've really anticipated, been looking forward to, I usually have more to say about it. The turrets on these, aside from everything else, just the function of them, absolutely amazing in the price range. Again, this one's a little pricier, but they're around $400 models that I mentioned that I have previously tested. And if you want to see any of those, check out the parts, accessories, and optics playlist on there for all my scope, optic, red dot reviews, and more. These things are super nice and precise. Every single one I've had from them, of the ones that I've mentioned, super nice and precise. I think I tested like one of their budget scopes before. It was like an $80 scope or something. Doesn't apply to that, but definitely the 5-25, the 5-40, and the 6-36 here. These are super crisp. Usually $300 and $400 scopes, and again, this one comes in higher than that, but I'm even referring to their $300 and $400 ones that I tested. Comparing other brands in that price range, there's usually some mush, you know, because it's a budget level scope, even at $300 or $400 for something like this, or the previous models I mentioned. You know, that's a budget price for something like that, what you're getting. These are super fine and crisp. I always, with other brands, get a little bit of mush still in the $300-$400 price range. You know, I've even tried buddy scopes like Athlon, or Ryoton, etc., and they still have some mush to them. These things are super sharp, precise. So I'll just give you a look at that right here on both of them. I turn through it like as slow as I can until it moves, and then it just instantly snaps to the next mark. Of course, you can hear it, so obviously I'm getting great forced feedback. It's audible, of course, and there's just nothing. If you notice, there's like the smallest amount right here if I wiggle it back and forth. But once you start going, there's nothing. I've not tested a whole lot of real high-end scopes, so I'm not sure there, but I would imagine you got to spend probably $800-900 to get turrets that crisp generally. Let me know if I'm wrong, but these things definitely blow me away in this class. So now we'll do the windage to show you that the windage is just as precise as the elevation there. Okay, so again, if we try there, it's practically nothing. And again, there's no mush between each one. It just snaps forward to the next one. But anyway, sorry, I knew that took way too long, but I really wanted to show you how crisp those turrets were. So we'll head down to the range now, get her mounted up, get her zeroed in, take some shots. Of course, I'll show you images through the scope to the best of my ability. Check out that clarity on maximum magnification out at 500 yards, and we'll wrap this one up. Here it is mounted up on my 16-inch BCA upper. It's 5.56. So like I said, a little big for an AR there. This should look at home on a hunting rifle or an AR-10. And I'm just using this 223 ammunition here, 55 grain. It's a 1 8 twist barrel, but this one for some reason just doesn't like 55 grain stuff that much. I like how they put the torque specs up there. They put them on the lower part there too, as you can see. It also shows the ring height there. And then they are numbered for the torque sequence, which is awesome too. So you can torque it in sequence properly. And then on the front there, they actually have matching numbers so you do not mix up the caps to the rings. And you see the numbers are different for each one, so you can be super precise there and have, you won't have to worry about getting them backwards or anything like that. But there's a good look at her there. Like I said, a little big for the AR, but it still works out for us. So I'm going to start out down here, 50 yards. Get her rudimentarily zeroed there, and then I got my 16-inch gong all the way out here at 400 yards to take a whack at. So I usually like to start out just picking a random piece of debris down here before I go on the paper to make sure we're on paper. So I'm going to be starting out on this rock here. We'll take a shot, see how close it is there, make necessary adjustments, and then get her on paper. So it looked like about 6 to 8 inches off to the right, 3 or 4 inches low. So we'll come back up here, make the necessary adjustments, just a rough guess. These are quarter MOA adjustments. So at 50 yards, we're needing to double what we would be doing if it was, 100 yards. So it's only going to move it about 1/8 of an inch per click down there at 50 yards. Now back to that rock or whatever it is. And we pretty much hit it there, so it should be good to go to the paper and go ahead and finalize the zero. And so I'm going for the dot on the right there, and again, remember the 55 grain stuff is not the most favorite of this rifle, so we're not shooting little dime-sized groups down here, but it's still not too bad considering he doesn't really like it. So that's 2 so far, practically touching just under that dot. And then that one there just off to the left. So, I mean, it's about a 1/2 inch group down there at 50 yards. So like I said, overall not too bad considering it doesn't like 55 grain stuff. So here we go, 400 yards, 16-inch gong. It's 3 hits in a row, 400 yards, no problem. So here's the images of the reticle through the scope for you guys. It's always going to look way, way better in person. It's actually really difficult to get these images with a camera through the glass. So down here, this is 50 yards on the minimum magnification 6x. And it's a little glary and whatnot from the sun, but that's the camera. I could actually still see like the little reticle. Even though, it's small right now, it increases in size as you zoom it in because it's a first focal plane. But most of that glare there from the sun hitting that white is due to the camera. When I look through it, it doesn't look anything like that. And then here's the same 50 yards. Now you can easily see all those little marks. And I don't remember the exact number I had this on, but it was somewhere in the middle of the magnification. And then here's the same 50 yards with full 36x magnification. Again, looks much better in person. You're seeing some discoloration there and some bluing, and while I think there was just a tad, because that's so close for 36x with the naked eye there, the camera's making it look a lot worse than it is. Also, for size reference, that dot there on the right, those are 3/4 inch dots. Now here's the 400 yard target we were shooting at. This is minimum magnification 6x. And then now here is, again, somewhere in the middle. I don't remember the exact number I had it on, but somewhere close to the middle of the magnification range down here at 400 yards. Again, looks much better in person, much more fine and crisp. And then there's the same 400 yards on maximum magnification 36x. And it's looking crappy here through the camera, okay? I was just having difficulty capturing this image here, 36x at 400 yards. So there's just the slightest amount of distortion around the very edge when you're actually looking at it through your own naked eye, like 1 or 2% of the edge. But I was having a real difficult time holding the camera still and keeping it focused through this on 36x for these images here. So it looks much, much better in person. And you can even see it's kind of like difficult to see the windage dots and elevation dots You can see them just fine with the naked eye, if that gives you any idea of how bad these images are. And it's because of the camera. Now, as I said earlier in the video, their 25x version that I tested was about 3 beams. No distortion, perfectly crystal clear all the way up. Then I tested their 40x. Right here I'm showing you the eye relief, about 4 inches there for me. The 40x, like I said, once I got above 30, it started to have a little bit of distortion, and especially above 35, it got worse. And I had to hold my eye in a real specific spot to see through it as best as possible. And what I'm showing you here on this one is I have a much larger window. I can move my eye back and forth, as you'll see here, to this degree. I think it's like almost a couple inches I'm able to move back and forth and still see the image. Whereas with the 40x model, that was about 4 beams, I had to be within a few millimeters of the perfect spot to get a decent image. This one is so much more forgiving, so the glass is definitely better, eye box is better, and the eye relief there is amazing. So she's definitely a step up there over that 40x I tested in regards to, the clarity's better. When I have it on maximum magnification, it's very forgiving in comparison. I got a nice long eye relief, and it doesn't matter so much where I hold my eye in relation to the eyepiece there. I'm still getting a good image, and it's definitely a better image than that 40x I tested. And again, the 40x was a different model. It was a lower end model, but I'm definitely noticing a pretty significant improvement here with this model. And also, like I said, this one is actually coming with the rings, whereas most of their scopes are not now, so that certainly adds value there, and their rings are freaking fantastic. I've reviewed a pair of their rings before. I've always loved the rings with the Discoveryopt. They are actually my favorite rings to date, and they actually got a really sweet another pair. I don't want to give it away. I'm trying to see if they'll send me a pair for a review, but they got some real innovative, cool brand new pair that's, well, it's adjustable, so I'm hoping to get a pair of those for a review. But yeah, their rings are awesome. So you get the rings with this one, at least as of the time of this recording, whereas they are discontinuing it for most of their other models. So again, it adds value there. And then, as I showed earlier in the video, not only have the turrets been awesome on all of these for the price range, they're super fine and crisp, good force feedback, very audible, but I also really love the new updated zero stop re-zero capability of this one. It's just so much better and streamlined and improved. You got those little 3 screws to strip out or anything. Everything's oversized. So it greatly simplifies being able to re-zero the turret caps there and set your zero stop. So yeah, overall, I'm absolutely in love with this thing. Best scope I've ever had by a long shot. Commands a higher price, like I said, than anything I've tested so far that's a regular scope. But I am definitely seeing the difference out here in the field with it. So if it's worth it for you to pay the extra to get the better clarity in glass, eye box, eye relief, all that, and then those awesome re-zeroable zero stop turrets, then this is definitely the one for you. Again, links in the description, and there's probably a discount code in there as well with those links. But thanks for stopping by and checking this one out today, guys. I really appreciate it. For more optic reviews, check out my parts, accessories, and optics playlist on the channel. Real quick, I wanted to show you the illumination here. Obviously, it's daytime in this image. The illumination is not for shooting in broad daylight per se. It's for like if a dark animal you're hunting walks out, and obviously your reticle is black, and so if a black bear walks out, it might be difficult to see little marks. That's the point of the illumination there. So even in broad daylight on a black or dark colored target, you're going to be able to see that illumination. So just wanted to throw up an image of that real quick so you guys could see what part of the scope is illuminated for you there. For few products I cannot link to on YouTube, be sure to check out my campsite page. Everything else is linked in the video description, like my shooting bag there, target stand I use, paper targets, steel targets, safety glasses, earmuffs, and way more. But again, thanks for checking this one out, and I hope to catch you on the next one.